Hi, hello everyone, and welcome to our March update for the TolkienGuide team here. We've got myself, Urulókë, Trotter, Mr. Underhill. We are quite happy to say hello to everyone, and we've got a laundry list of things that we wanted to update people on. I think if you were peeking at our background when this live stream started, we're gonna launch our conversations month with a recent acquisition of mine that would turned out to be a lot more enjoyable and
A
important, I
very
would say.
special acquisition.
A very special acquisition. So
Possibly
I'm going to
unique.
try and
Yeah.
Very
very
unique.
unique.
Yeah.
So you can see Blackwell's logo, and someone has handwritten on it that this is the Hobbit 50th anniversary 1987 press kit. This we had been seeing this listing online for I think almost a year when it first got mentioned. It was I thought overpriced at the time, so a year ago. The seller recently dropped their price, which was just enough to get me to look at it. It still felt like more than I wanted to spend just on a generic press kit, but there's some fun things in there. I'll show off some of those in a second, but it turned out, in my mind, I'm going to use the word priceless. It's hard to say. I don't think I would ever put a price tag on a photocopy. I mean, those are easy to make. But
Well,
sometimes
they
it's
are
what
if
is
you've got the
photocopied.
originals to photocopy them
Yeah, if
for.
you have the
Yeah,
originals,
that's
they
If
the
you
are
hard
can't
cheap.
bit.
find the original, I know.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So the press kit that came inside, this was from what we
All kinds
have
of goodies.
read, is this is was sent to various booksellers and members of the press, and it was made by Unwin Hyman at the time was the publisher's name. They had merged from George Allen Unwin and the I forget what Hyman's full publisher name was, but the
Hyman
two book
Bell. It was Hyman
Hyman
Bell.
Bell, thank you. So they merged
Yeah.
into Unwin Hyman, and in 1986 they were putting together their launch plans for 1987, which is the 50th anniversary of the publishing of The Hobbit. So they had lots of big plans, and they wanted to get the press on board. They wanted to get major booksellers on board, and they put together new cover art for the paperback and the hardcover. They had some materials for bookshops to have, like the shelf hangers, they call them shelf talkers, which is the text that goes on the shelf. They had window displays. They had bookmarks they were going to give away. They ran some contests. We've talked about some of those contests on site. We won't go into the details here, but
Didn't they do
all of
that
that
gold
material.
ring as well? They did that gold ring,
Yeah,
didn't
there
they?
was
That was on the site
an
recently.
actual gold ring,
Yeah,
Yeah.
um,
they produced
and
one
that's
of the.
mentioned in this. Yep.
Yeah, I was just going to say they produced one of the best the best hobbits that's ever been produced. Actually, the Green Super Deluxe. It's one of the prettiest hobbits
Yeah.
ever produced. I
It
think.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I'm going to start pulling stuff out of this. Some of the things that's included in many of these, although it's hard to tell what you're going to get if you find one on the market because people take things out and lose them. But
hmm
here's a sample of what the new paperback is going to look like at that time. Uh,
Roger
there's
Garland
when
cover art.
is Yep,
Fantastic.
yep.
hmm
And the new Hobbit hardcover, they
hmm
added the 50th anniversary tag in the lower corner for that one.
But the publishers,
And
it's interesting on that one. If you look at the bottom on the spine,
uh-huh,
the publisher's
yep.
never labelled as that.
Oh yeah.
Can I get that
hmm
Yeah.
out of the glare?
It's
Yep.
Yes,
got
Alan
the
Numbing.
So
It's got the red on
this
the
is
dust jacket, like Tolkien
Mm.
originally wanted,
yep.
which hadn't been done
Yeah.
very much up
Okay.
to that point. Yeah,
And clearly this is a prototype because, as you mentioned, it says George Allen Unwin, and the actual edition says Unwin Hyman on it.
yeah.
Um, They
Or
did
Gil.
make
Yeah.
a little booklet written by Brian Alderson that
hmm
has um, an essay on the publishing history of The Hobbit. It reproduced little bits of art. There is one letter that was reproduced in here that Tolkien wrote about preparing to publish The Hobbit. So you can find these separately. They show up occasionally online. You'll
There's
note this
a
particular
Blackwell's
one
version,
has,
and there's an Unwin
yep,
Hyman version too.
And a US
yep,
version as well.
And there's a Houghton Mifflin version too. Yes, there's three
yep,
different variants of it.
exactly. And since I have a press kit that was sent to Blackwell's, the one that came in this has the Blackwell's logo on it. I have an Unwin Hyman somewhere else. Another thing they were doing for promotion, and they sent a sample of in here, this is rather larger, is the
That's
50th
nice.
anniversary John Howe
Yeah,
poster.
I have that poster too.
And
It's very nice.
it's a
Both
great
Andrew and I have
poster.
that poster too. It's very nice. Yeah.
I do, yeah.
Do you have a signed one? Because the documentation in the press kit says that they made 100 that were signed by John Howe, and they had others
No,
that were not, but there were 100
mine's
that were printed on higher quality.
Mine's the signed one.
yeah, mine's
All
not.
the
Mine's
ones
an
with
unsigned
100.
one.
Yeah.
I have the sample.
And I think it is different paper as well, Mike. To the one
It
that
is.
you've got.
Yep, it's
Yeah, I think
supposed to be.
it is. Yeah, it's different
Yep.
paper.
Mm.
There's overview letter from Rainer Unwin.
Mm-hmm.
There is the marketing strategy, which calls out the events. The giveaway of that gold ring is listed in here. The John
That's pretty
Howe
cool.
sign
The marketing
poster.
strategy is probably something that most people threw away, I would guess. So to have
I
the marketing
know,
strategy is pretty cool.
The order form for booksellers specifically, so you can order
That's
in
very
bulk.
interesting.
Yeah,
I
that
love
is pretty
those.
cool.
It was
That's pretty
fun.
cool too.
Yeah. We talk a little bit about some of the fun things that show up on there on the site. And I skipped the general order form. It's just a price list of all the books in print. Publishing strategy, so when things are going to come out and what events they're planning on the calendar for 1987. This is just a photo print. So it's an example of some of the marketing material they're planning on coming out with, and they printed it on photo paper, probably because they didn't have a color photocopier available at the time. But there's some interesting little details in there. And then buried at the back, I can't really show all of this. I'll put my fingers over it. But there was, in my particular press kit, a stack of photocopies of 14 letters that Tolkien wrote, 4 letters that Stanley Unwin wrote, and 1 letter from a German publisher, all from 1937 to 1938. So these are pretty much all of the letters relating to getting The Hobbit published. Why these were included in my particular press kit that I bought a couple weeks ago, nobody knows. I have talked with Blackwell's executives. I have talked with the Tolkien estate. Obviously, almost everyone who was around in 1986 is not available to chat at this point.
Well,
but
there is one person we could ask, which is Jane Johnson. She might know.
Yeah,
I might see if I can ask her, because she was around. I think she was working there at the time, so she might know.
Yep. And I'm still pursuing a couple other threads of people that we might be able to talk with, or records that we might be able to dig up on this. But
yeah, because it appears that Jeremy's particular version that he got is a one-off, because I've talked to a couple of other collectors that have that press kit in there, and they don't have, theirs did not come with those letters. So
yeah, and I actually ended up sending scans of these photocopies back to the estate because they did not have copies themselves. The originals are, at this point, I want to say 100% of them. It's in the HarperCollins archive, so the George Allen Unwin archive that HarperCollins has, which is in Glasgow at this point. So they're not really accessible. They're obviously not something that people are allowed to make photocopies of. I'm completely speculating, that these are copies made from Humphrey Carpenter's working copies. So when he was working on the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien back in late 1970s, he would have made photocopies of material. He asked people to submit photocopies of letters, and he used that as his working set when he was making the book. So it seems likely that he would have made photocopies from the George Allen and Unwin archive with their permission. He was making this book for them,
Right.
rather than working with the originals, right? He's not going to be carrying around all these original letters while he's editing and putting the book together. So I'm speculating he made photocopies. George Allen and Unwin's probably had some of these copies sitting around. Rayner Unwin in 1986 possibly
Well, those have
put
been in their
these
office.
together.
They would have been in their
Yeah,
office, the originals,
at
at
that
that
point,
point.
it would have been
Yeah.
in their office. So,
I believe they
yeah,
had a
Wiley's.
fireproof safe by all
Yep.
accounts, which is what Wayne and Christina has said, and they put all the stuff was in there. So all the letters were all in. So obviously any burglar who broke in, you know where to go, break into the safe. That's where all the good stuff is. Yes.
Not only do I need to become a burglar, but I need to invent a time machine, right? Well, second best thing
you need to channel your inner Bilbo Baggins.
There you go. But photocopies are better than nothing, and I was shocked to find, looking at, let's say, the 14 letters that Tolkien wrote, which is Carpenter numbers. I think it's 12 through number 30, just the ones relating to the Hobbit. There's some other letters mixed in there, but there were 14 letters between 12 and 30 that were relating to the Hobbit. That I now have photocopies of, his original handwritten manuscript letters. And so obviously the first thing I did was compare those to what Carpenter had published. And there were two, I think, that had absolutely no differences, and then two more that had just some slight cosmetic, like paragraph difference or a punctuation change, just little minor edits, which are totally normal. And then, about 70-80% of these letters, so the vast bulk of them, 10, had significant differences that I could not attribute to just editing, where, just trying for clarity, trying to make sure that, if Tolkien had made a mistake or if he had written hastily or anything like that. Those are normal editing changes. I expect to see those all the time. And there are a couple of those in there, but there are missing words that Carpenter skipped that I can't think of a reason editorially to skip those words. Again, he may have. We don't know the thought process, but he left plenty of other words in that he could have edited down for space. He doesn't tend to just edit single words out of sentences. If you look at the
it's
decisions
paragraphs,
he's making.
isn't it? Normally, you would take out.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's interesting to see. Were these mistakes or editorial decisions? Don't know. And then, of course, we know that Carpenter was under significant pressure to reduce the size of the book. And so he removed a significant number of letters, which we've now seen in the revised expanded edition. And he also removed many paragraphs from existing letters just for space and clarity, etc. So obviously these photocopies.
But he also was meant to have some weird codes to indicate what he'd removed, which it seems he didn't stick to that code. Very well. He did have a code, but he didn't stick to it.
Yeah, it seems like Carpenter made a decision, and I don't know how much of it was with injunction with Christopher as well, but they took out a lot of the non-Middle Earth material, which is why a lot of the it shows up in this revised edition.
Yep. So yeah, there. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think it was 8 letters had paragraphs or significant sections edited out for space. And so I reviewed those with the estate. I can't publish the text of what's in them, but they did give me permission to summarize what's in those. So if you go to our letters guide, I'll put links in the show notes in here. But if you find these letters, they have in their summary description what was removed from them. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. There's and one of the other topics we won't cover in this live stream, but I'm working on an article because it's a rabbit hole I am deep down into, is the exchange between the German publishers. So I now have a photocopy of the original letter in German from the German publisher, and Tolkien's response to Stanley Unwin, and Tolkien's proposed letter to send back to them, the one that didn't get sent, the longer one. So he wrote 2 letters. Stanley Unwin sent the shorter one back to the German publisher. I don't know of anybody who's seen that except for the German publisher at this point. I don't think it exists anymore. But the longer letter, the proposed letter, I have a copy of, and the letter in German from the publisher. So there's a whole history that I'm going to delve into on that one. It's fascinating. But this was, you don't expect to find something like this when you're collecting. Is just a trove of, at this point, it's information. It's not a collectible, as I said, they're photocopies, but the information in them is fascinating to me. It's been fascinating to everyone I've talked to about it, including the estate. None of us know why these exist or how they got out into the wild, but it's been a fantastic addition to our letter guide to take 14 letters from Tolkien that were partial. Like we only knew what Carpenter had shown us, and now the guide at least can mark those as complete. The full letters have been seen. We know what Tolkien wrote.
I wonder if and I'm totally spitballing here, but I wonder if whoever got sent this particular press kit originally had some sort of relationship with somebody at George Allen Unwin or Unwin Hyman, and they asked specifically for photocopies, and that's why they got sent. I mean, I don't know, but I'm just trying to think about like why this particular press kit would have these.
It is difficult to come up with a really good explanation, because I can't really think of any. Why you send these to Blackwell's in particular?
That's why I think maybe they asked specifically for them or something, but who knows.
They must have been someone quite well known with either Houghton Mifflin, because it's Blackwell's in America, isn't it? It was sent to. Wasn't Blackwell? Wasn't it someone in America it was sent to?
Yes, Blackwell's executive that this was sent to is he has since passed away, but he lived in America. He was the VP of, at the time he retired, he was the VP of academic sales for the United States for Blackwell's. When I contacted the current staff of Blackwell's, they were very excited to say, "Oh yeah, we knew him. That's great. That's awesome." And so they're kind of helping me try and dig in to figure out why he might have received this. I think, again, speculation, it was sent to him accidentally, not the press kit, but the one with the photocopies. I don't expect, because it doesn't look opened. There's nothing's been gone through. It looks like he received it and he just threw it in a file cabinet. Honestly,
they would have sent something like that to Houghton Mifflin, to Austin, because he was doing his book. He was doing a pamphlet on, which obviously he did the pamphlets for that. And I wonder if they just sent it to Blackwell's instead of him.
And I mean,
sent it to the wrong person.
It's an interesting theory.
The Unwins and Tolkien himself had a very long relationship with Basil Blackwell and the Blackwell's bookshop. Right,
well, he lived in his house.
Blackwell's published
Right.
some of Tolkien's poetry back from 1915 onward. And their headquarters were in Oxford, and Tolkien was there.
Tolkien bought his house.
George Allen. So there was a lot of relationship there. There may have been someone in Blackwell's that was consulted very early on to help with the marketing plan. And these photocopies may have ended up somewhere in that consultation. But how they ended up in the press kit and then in the United States and then, at a bookseller is a chain of events that I can't explain.
We'll never know.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. But yeah, it's opened new doors for Tolkien's letters guide on our site, definitely. Not just being able to add these entries, seeing the German letter, seeing Stanley Unwin's letters, which are obviously not in the letters of J.R. Tolkien by Carpenter. Carpenter's book only has letters written by Tolkien. So now we have 4 letters from Stanley back to Tolkien that we can add to the conversation to see the messages back and forth. And as I said, the German publisher's letter is very interesting, and we'll have more on that soon. So a fantastic find. being able to add things to our guide is obviously awesome. Finding out that there are more letters from Tolkien in the Blackwell's archives. So I'm pursuing that thread as well. So hopefully at some point we can add more letters to the guide, because there is an archive of the records from Blackwell's that's off, and hopefully we'll be able to delve into that in the future as well. So I didn't realize they had letters in there until I started talking with them. Good. So let's move on. I'm going to pass the ball to Trotter, who there was a new audiobook that we wanted to chat about a little bit that just recently came out.
Yes. Well, we've just been talking about Tolkien's letters, and amazing coincidence, the audiobook of the revised and expanded version of Tolkien's letters came out last week. It's narrated by, well, it has 3 narrators listed. It has Chris Smith, who actually does the foreword, an individual called Mike Grady, who people in the US may never have heard of him, but any UK viewers of a certain age, i.e. the same age as me, might remember a program called Citizen Smith, which had Robert Lindsay in it, but it also had Mike Grady, was actually in that program. He was very good in it, but he since, after that, and that program sort of finished in the autumn 1980s, Mike Grady seems to have specialised in audiobooks, and he's very good as he's got the very accomplished audiobook reading voice, and effectively what he does is the introduction, and he also reads the comments and the footnotes for the letters that Carpenter and Christopher Tolkien wrote. And then Samuel West, who again, I think a lot of people that know Samuel West, they probably know his parents as well, which is Timothy West, which he's done some audiobooks with. So he did Unfinished Tales. The Fallen Numenor, I think he did that by himself. I don't think his father was in that. But Unfinished Tales, they split. They did a very similar thing in Unfinished Tales. They split it between one was Christopher, and one was J.R.R. Tolkien.
They do that on Fall of Gondolin, so I'm actually listening to that right now, and they do
a
similar thing for Fall of Gondolin.
Yeah, and I think it's quite an effective way to do it, because
it's great,
because they have different voices. You want a sort of distinctive voice between it, so you know who's actually talking at this time. And the other thing at the moment, that's a TV program that I think is great, and I'm really I love the program, largely because it's actually set where I used to live. So I quite like it. It's called All Creatures Great and Small, and it's actually on US TV as well. And he's
you can get it on PBS here in the US.
Yeah, called Samuel West. Called Siegfried Farnan, and James Herriot is the book's about him, but it's also about Siegfried. And Siegfried was a real person who actually lived in the next sort of town to where I lived, which was 7 miles away. I didn't know anything about these people when I lived there. I didn't even know that James Herriot lived there for a start, and he was, because he'd never told it. He had a different name. He had a pseudonym. It was called Alf White, was his real name. So there's no chance. So I knew there was a vet called Alf White in Thirsk, which is near where I lived. I didn't know it was James Herriot.
How much of it have you listened to, Trotter? Have you got through the whole audiobook?
I am probably about a third of the way. I've just got to the Hobbit, actually, to the bit where
because I haven't started. I haven't started it yet, so I don't have anything to say about it.
It's very, very well read, and I think it's now down to a real art form. Is doing audiobooks. It's a really nice way to listen to books.
I have listened to whatever the previews that HarperCollins has released so far, and it's next on my list, and I'm excited to listen to it. It sounds like they've done a pretty good job with it.
Yeah, I haven't got to letter 131, but I'm assuming that will be a book by itself normally, let alone.
Well, you have to block
on
up
the
a
trail
whole day for that
was on the trail has been saying that he's listened to it multiple times, and it's fantastic to listen to live, which is cool to hear. Yeah, I also wanted to mention, because we got a couple of questions on this, is footnotes and how they're handled in the audio reading. I think they've done a pretty good job. I haven't listened to the whole book yet, so this doesn't apply to everything, but footnotes themselves are sort of blended into the text as far as they're able to, where the narrator, Samuel West, will say, before he says a quote, he'll kind of say, this is a quote from letter, 131, and then he'll read. There's little bits like that where the information.
I think Samuel West just reads Tolkien stuff. It's Mike Grady does everything else, so he does its letter.
Yep.
Whatever. But
because they want to give you a distinctive voice that's just for footnotes.
They do, but you don't have to wait till you get to the end of the audiobook to hear the footnotes. So it actually they're lumped in with the letters, which I think works very well.
And they've done that with the other volumes too. Like they do that with Unfinished Tales. They do that with Fall of Gondolin. They have the footnotes integrated, but they have a different voice reading the footnotes. Whoever that particular different voice would be. I guess maybe Timothy West is too old, huh, to take on.
Yes, and unfortunately, Samuel West's mother has dementia, which is Primella Scales, who used to be in Fawlty Towers, and I think he's just looking after her. I don't think he's got the time really to do things like that. But I'd definitely say that for anyone who likes audiobooks and Tolkien, this is definitely 100% recommended. You should go out by it.
Yeah.
Really.
Oh, I see on the trail says quite very. Yeah, and he would know. He's listened to it, I think, all the way through a couple times. I haven't even started it yet.
He's been through much more than I've had time for at this point. But
yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think his days appear, from my perspective, to be gushing about listening to this audiobook and then telling me coding improvements he wants made on the site so we can keep the guide moving. So it's I love having Phil around, and we'll do another letters specific update and other guide updates because we're planning on having more guide sections expanded throughout this year. So we're working on books and reviews and journals and fanzines and other sections that will be populated and crowd generated at some point. We're trying to get to the point where we can have many contributors who are helping build this out, because it is a gargantuan process to build these guides out and get them usable level of information.
It's a big task. So the more hands on, the better. The more people we can get involved, the better, I think.
Yep. So let's pass over to Mr. Underhill now, and we'll just start touching on. Why don't we go over some forthcoming titles in the next month or two?
So there's really only in the next month or two. There's really only two main forthcoming titles. There's the I think the one that a lot of people are excited about. There's the box set number 2 for the History of Middle Earth for Christopher Tolkien's centenary. So it's going to have just like box set number 1, it'll have the John Howe artwork, kind of a triptych on the box, and it will have volumes 3, 4, and 5 of the History of Middle Earth, which is, if you're scoring at home, that's the Lays of Beleriand, the Shaping of Middle Earth, and the Lost Road and Other Writings. I know a lot of people, some of these volumes are some of their favorite volumes, so I think a lot of people are super excited about box set number 2. I think the John Howe artwork on these particular volumes are some of his best work, and so I'm excited to see how that looks, because we've all seen the mock-ups, and so, but it's going to be exciting to see how it really looks. I'm going to venture a guess that the sort of the quality, and all the materials will be very, very similar to box set number 1. So if you're pleased with box set number 1, you'll probably be pleased with box set number 2. Obviously, it'll be a little bit smaller because it's only 3 volumes. And then the other one is the Maps book that is being. I guess it's kind of a reissue. I'm not off the top of my head. I don't remember if there's any sort of like revisions. I think there might be a revision.
I think it has been revised a little bit, but it's not much.
Mm-hmm. But it's not much. I think it's mostly just a reissue of the Maps of Middle Earth that Brian Sibley and John Howe worked on. I guess it's been a couple of decades ago now that they worked on that.
It's been a long while, yeah.
Yeah.
So the fold-out posters of, I want to say, 3 or 4 maps that John Howe did, and then a book.
Yes.
By Brian Sibley.
Yeah, because back in the day they issued sort of like a trade edition where it was sort of like an all-in-one where you had fold-out maps, which I think you can probably still get pretty easily. I have one somewhere. You can probably still get pretty easily. And then there were, I guess you could call them, I don't know, Andrew, what do you want to call them? You want to call them deluxe, the sort of like the red, green, and blue, the sort of the mini ones. I don't know if I would call those deluxe.
Well, they're just binders stuck around around.
Yeah, they're kind of cloth binders. Really. There was, I think there was a much smaller run than the one that with the fold out map, but those have
they sold out, I think, quite quickly. They're quite popular.
Oh yeah, so Jeremy's got the one that I was talking about, the one with the fold out maps. Yeah, so it's going to be kind of a reissue of that.
Well, it replaces that one. Exactly.
It replaces that one. Yeah, and that one's been in print forever, and so I think they're just kind of refreshing and updating. And then the other one, this has already been published, but this is the Hobbit graphic novel, William Morrow has put out. This has been out for some time with other publishers and in other volume variants, things like that. But this is illustrated by David Wenzel, and it's actually, if you flip through it, it's if you like comic books, or maybe you want to introduce the Hobbit to there's a young person in your life you'd like to get hooked on Tolkien, hook them while they're young. So there's
I think it's quite good.
I think it's quite good. No, it's David Wenzel's illustrations are fantastic. I mean, these, like I said, these have been out in some form for over 30 years now, but this is just the latest volume that's being produced. So you can pick this up any of the retailers. You can pick this up.
And
I think previous editions
as well, which is this one.
Oh yeah.
Which is Tolkien Lighting Up the Darkness.
Yeah, and I was kind of skeptical on that one.
Now.
I was kind of skeptical on that one, but a couple of people who I respect highly recommended it. So I think I may pick up a copy now.
Well, I'd like to see some more comic books actually for Tolkien, because I think it's a nice format. And David, of course, as we're talking about, he started it all, and they're great. They're really impressive illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Yeah. The David Wenzel was an authorized adaptation, if you will, to a graphic novel. So he had permission to do that. It does cover the entire story. When it was first published, it was in multiple comic book issues, so smaller page counts. There were 3 of them, and then combined into a single hardcover collector's edition. There's been various ones, but they've all been published by comic book publishers up until now. The rights have reverted, and William Morrow, so under HarperCollins umbrella, is now releasing it.
I think Eclipse was the original publisher. Is that right, Jeremy?
Yep.
Back in the 90s. Yeah.
They're not hard to find, but it's awesome that it's getting released by HarperCollins under the imprint, and that it will be available. It's a great adaptation. I think it's fairly authentic and works well with the text. Like it's a graphic novel of the Hobbit. And then Trotter, the one you held up, is a biographical look at Tolkien in World War One.
It's based on based on the movie, right? That came out a couple of years ago, right, Jeremy?
I've heard, and I haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
that at least it's covering the same time period. And it would be interesting if someone knows if, does it pull out some of the flexibility of the movie as far as
It
historical accuracy, or is it actually biographically accurate?
and
I don't know yet.
Andrew, does it have a section of books that Tolkien had in his library, or like some sort of subset? Because I want to say I was talking to Lance Formation about something, and I want to say he said that there was a library section.
Yeah, there is actually. There is in Tolkien's library.
Okay.
And it's got Beowulf, Kalevala, Exeter, Arthurian, Eddard, Sir Gawain. I've not seen this before, but it's actually it's only a few pages.
Oh, so James says it focuses
it's
on
not very
the
comprehensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's focused on the war. Thanks, James, for confirming that. And it was originally written in French and published in France in 2019, if I'm
not that long
correctly.
ago, just a few years ago.
And so this is a translation into English that's now being published in the US and I'm pretty sure in the UK, though there's an edition as well. So what else do we have? We've covered Forthcoming. We'll do more updates later on. There's more coming this year, but I think this time we're just focusing on stuff in the next couple of weeks or month or two. Then let's flip back to, let's see, Andrew, you did the graphic novel Ched. Was there something you want to show off, chat about a little bit of a recent acquisition?
Well, I've been on a recent kick of, which has been really, really fun, looking for books that Tolkien had in his library, not the actual volumes, because I'm not made of money, but just different titles that Tolkien had in his library. So it's been a fun couple of months, just kind of like digging around, going through. So what I did was I started with I pulled up my copy of Aranzo's book, Tolkien's library that he has, and Aranzo's done some fantastic work. He's got every book that Tolkien owned and had in his library. He's got all the bibliographic information, so it makes it really easy to search for these volumes. And so I've found many volumes. You can find most of these for I mean, based on some of the prices that Tolkien books are commanding these days, these books are dirt cheap to acquire. So I've got a couple here that I think are of note. There's this book called These Are My Comrades. This is by Alan Rook, this is a book about the soldiers' experience during World War I, and Tolkien had a copy in his library as well. This was published by Routledge in the 1940s, and it's also got some sections of poetry that World War I veterans wrote.
There's some letters to Alan Rook in the letters guide. Yeah.
So that's one. I've got this pamphlet here from a lecture that Tolkien's friend and contemporary W.H. Auden made, an inaugural lecture delivered at the University of Oxford in 1956. It's a pamphlet from lecture Making, Knowing, Judging. And this is very, very fragile. It's got just sort of like thin paper. It feels a lot like the Beowulf Monsters and the Critics volume. It's kind of sort of like that. Another book that Tolkien had in his library, which just came yesterday, actually. One of Tolkien's. Again, a lot of these books are really, really. This one, Athelstan, a Middle English Romance. This is another volume that Tolkien had in his library. This is a lot of these are Oxford University Press, obviously. This one, an adjacent volume on Beowulf, Dorothy Whitlock. Looks like a lot of the Oxford volumes.
That's a nice cover on that one as well. You did well with that one.
And then a couple of volumes. We were chatting about the Kalevala earlier. Everyman's Library, this publication company, published a lot of sort of like classics, if you want to call them that. And these are reprints from the 1930s, but Tolkien had copies of these. He had several copies of these in his libraries. I've got some older ones as well that are super, super fragile. So it's been a fun couple of months kind of digging around and trying to find some of these volumes that that Tolkien had in his library. So, because it's interesting to me, it's interesting to see what Tolkien was working with and what he was drawing from as he was doing all the stuff that we love so much. So it's been really cool. It's a cool avenue if you want to go down. It's also a much cheaper avenue to go down than collecting, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit these days. So it's been fun, and just grab you a copy of Aranzo's book, start looking through titles that you think might be interesting, and do a search for. And you too can have a library like Tolkien's. Yeah, and Jeremy's holding up that book. That's what I've been using. So it's been it's been fun to hunt these volumes down and to kind of see what they're about. Because a lot of them I had never heard of them before I opened up what and looked through all that stuff. So my search is not over, but I think it's been a fun couple of months. And these aren't all of them. I've got some more too that I'm kind of working on a longer form article for some of these because some of them I've gotten in and I need to kind of go through and really look at what they actually are. Like, for example, like the Athelstan volume I've barely opened. I couldn't tell you what it's about. I'll have to actually kind of look through the table of contents and read through it. But I do want to write up something on these when I get them all in a position where I can. So it's been fun.
Excellent. How about you, Trotter? What's something recent? You had something else to talk about other than the graphic novel, the signature paperbacks, I think.
Yeah, the signature paperbacks are absolutely fascinating in scope, because basically it does look like every single paperback edition is going to come out as a signature paperback for Tolkien. So what I mean by signature paperbacks is paperbacks with Tolkien signature at the top, not signed ones, really signed by him. It's an interesting format. I was watching a video the other day about some of the early Collins work, and one of the things that Collins did when they first started was to make all their books look the same. Because it was cheaper to do it, but it made them stand out, and you could, when you go and look at a shelf in a bookstore, you could see all the Collins ones because they all look the same. And the other publishers did this as well. And I think this is quite a nice thing to go back to, because these signature ones do look the same. Now, what Collins did that I didn't like so much was they were all the same colour. So every single one was like green and black. I think that's a bit boring, really. So I think it's much better to actually have these different colours that they're using to identify them. So far we've had about 4 different colours of these, but I'd imagine there's going to be 12 different colours. So it should look quite colourful on your shelf.
What have we seen? We've got maroon and blue.
We've got
and
blue, grey, black.
And
actually, the black ones as well.
And green, right?
Can you grab a handful? Trotter, can you grab a handful and just hold them up to the camera?
There's one that's Peoples of Middle-earth, for instance, which is a grey one. This one's a bit controversial because this now says that it's part of the history of Lord of the Rings, which is which is slightly controversial because she's never said that before.
It's kind of a stretch.
Well, it's sort of Sauron defeated, and that one you could argue neither of them really are the history of Lord of the Rings. There's only half the books.
What do y'all think about the heraldic devices they chose? They seem kind of random. The heraldic devices they chose for the. I would have liked to have it maybe captured more of the theme of the book. I don't know. I'm nitpicking, but that was like one of the first things I thought.
There's not that many they can choose from, so maybe they're saving the ones you want for other volumes. It's
it was like one of the history of the Lord of the Rings has maybe like Finrod's heraldic device. Yes. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of strange the ones that they picked.
I don't think they've looked at who Tolkien's labelled them as. They've just picked Tolkien's heraldic devices.
Like, oh, that looks pretty.
Yeah, that one looks nice.
I think my favorite cover is probably going to be the index, because the index has got all of them on there. They have a smattering of all the heraldic devices on the index.
That's the Book of Lost Tales.
That's Luthien.
If you're in America, like Jeremy and I, you can order through if Blackwell's, apparently they're keeping the cover on their website is in line with what they have in stock, because I ordered from them a few weeks ago, and the ones that have the updated cover, like the one Andrew's showing on the screen, if it's updated on their site, that means they have that cover in stock.
And you can also buy them from, if you're in the UK, you can buy them from HarperCollins directly. And actually, that's something we haven't mentioned.
That's probably the safest way to get the new cover.
Sales. They normally have a 30% off sale on permanently, but sometimes you can get 50%. Unfortunately, they'll only ship to the Channel Islands, the UK and Ireland, which is annoying.
Yep.
But we have actually done a page that just shows all of the HarperCollins edition. You can click straight onto them, which we will put up on the site when they have sales, like 50% off the sale. Next.
Jeremy, are you going to collect these, the signature paperback volumes? Is that something you're going to go for?
There'll be a lot. There'll be a lot.
Yeah, I'm depending on to make sure that we're staying up to date on what all these look like. I'm just so double, triple stacked right now that
I was wondering if you were going to have the room for them.
I know. Yeah. Well, I'm getting both the UK and the US box sets with the John Howe dust jackets, the reversible jackets. So I don't also need a full set of paperbacks that direction.
What do y'all think about the reversible jackets?
Oh, I think it's a good idea to do it.
Yeah, it's
whether
fun.
People are ever going to show the non-John Howe ones is a bit of a challenge.
It'll be interesting to see. And there's little details like the Silmarillion and Unfinished Tales reversed don't look like the original editions, which is fine. So they're new designs, which I think is interesting, but I also like the John Howe. But that's one reason to have two sets is you can show both of the dust jacket arts. I thought it was interesting, and I'm kind of guessing that it was a mistake that the U.S. William Morrow box set, when you reverse the jackets, it has the HarperCollins logo on the reverse.
I know. I was really disappointed. I wanted the WM on the
Yep.
Yeah.
So
they may correct that with the second printing. That
might be a little.
You don't think so?
One wrong. They can't change it now.
Sure they can. Sure they can.
Oh yeah, they change things all the time in later impressions.
Tolkien Publishing's littered with stuff like that.
Yeah, I was supposed to.
Yeah, you're making me remember. I'm not going to pull it out now, but there was the Silmarillion Illustrated where they misspelled Ted's name on the spine of the book. The dust jacket's fine, but on the spine they misspelled it, and so later impressions have that correct.
Ted's always getting the short end of the stick. Remember the 1990s Hobbit volume that's got Ted's cover art and it says Roger Garland on the back of it.
Yeah. They forgot to update the artist credit.
I wish I had that handy. I could pull that down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they did change that one again though. But he does seem to get the short straw for a lot of these things.
Yep. So I'm going to throw up, we just got a question in the chat. This is a good breaking point, so I thought I'd throw it up here for each of us to take a quick stack at. I personally like having, the question for those who are just listening is it better to buy a whole set of paperbacks or individually? So personally, from my approach, I like having the matching paperbacks. So like the design style, the size, if you're going for the, James mentioned earlier in the chat, the black design, some of which had the signatures on them. So that for a decade or so, HarperCollins was doing these black trade paperback sets, and now they've gone to this new multicolored design set. So having those match is nice, but sometimes there's small textual differences, or not all books are published in a set, so they might change their cover design before they finish like all of the Tolkien books, and then you can't get some of the volumes to match the particular design you like.
Which is annoying.
I'm sort of
Jeremy says, so if you wanted to get a set like this, if you don't buy them all when they come out, you could end up with that.
Yeah.
Or you could end up with the new one that's just come out now, which is this one.
It's very hard to.
There's now 3 of them. that you can
It's
get.
very hard
Yep.
once if you miss out on a cover design from the publisher for paperbacks. It can be very hard to collect a set of older paperbacks like what Andrew's holding up, because a lot of
Mhm.
times dealers use stock images for paperbacks,
And the
so
ISBN's
Yep.
the same as well.
yeah,
which is a
so
Yeah,
it can be
the
it
ISBN's
can
the
be very
same.
tricky. I think it depends on why you're wanting the paperbacks. Like if you're wanting them just as reading copies, like if you want to just have the text,
Mhm.
then and the cover
Doesn't
art is
matter,
not
does it?
as
Doesn't
important
really
to you.
matter.
Yep.
I
Yep. They're
for
all
one, I was just gonna say, I for one like to collect set. Like I like to put sets together, and so that would annoy me if I was missing sort of like one of the cover. I would probably have to. My life would have to stop until I found that cover art.
Yep. So buy them, especially for paperbacks. If when you're at the point of collecting them specifically because you like the design and the artwork, and you're going to put it up on the shelf, you're at the
Buy
point where
all
you
of
should
them.
be
Buy
asking,
all of them.
buy
Yeah.
all of them, and ask questions, ask for pictures, double check what you're getting. Don't be if you're buying from a major retailer, you can return. Most of them will allow returns for any reason. We've noticed this, especially with the new designs that are just starting to come out, as has been mentioned multiple times now. They use the same ISBN. So when you go to order it from, say, Blackwell's, if they still have stock in their warehouse of the old cover design, you'll get that. And if they've run
they're
out
gonna
and they've
give you the
gotten a
old
new
stock
shipment,
first. Yeah.
exactly. They're going to get rid of the old stock before the new one comes in. And so making sure you're getting the brand new cover design that's just starting to come out can be tricky for a little while. And if you wait too long and you're really interested in collecting the first impression with that cover on it,
Yeah, you can
you
miss the
might get
boat on
they
that.
might have already reprinted it and you get a later impression. And so it's a game. Like I don't think there's any collectability like, oh, the first impression with this cover of this trade paperback from 2023 is worth more than any other. It's something fun
No,
that
it's
we like to focus on and pick.
Yeah.
But go for what interests you. If you really want a particular impression with a particular cover design, ask lots of questions. Ask for help finding it. Ask for other people who might be willing to trade or sell you their copy. Ask the dealer what they have. Ask for pictures. Go into shops, especially if you're in the UK. It's easy to go in and hold it before you buy it. If you're in the US trying to buy UK editions, there's less opportunity and it's harder to return things. So you got to be more careful, whether it's asking questions or asking help from someone in the UK. It takes effort and it has to be worth your time. You have to be willing to want to put invest the energy. Otherwise, just buy a copy of the book that you like. I think it really comes down to personal preference, and there's no value or collectability differences between those
these
99% of the time.
Yeah, Jeremy said, these paperbacks are not worth anything, and they're not going to be worth anything ever. So it's really just,
well, they're probably worth less than you paid for them. So that's why I like to get them at half price in the first place, because that way I've only paid half as much as they originally were meant to be. They're probably not even worth that in the future. So that's the problem. You still end up paying.
That thing about what Jeremy was saying about the getting the first print number of a particular volume, that happened to me last year with the the gray Hobbit, the textured paper Hobbit that HarperCollins put out. I think the first state of it was the 15th printing, and I waited a little bit too long, and I got a 16. I was so upset that I got a 16. It's like, drat. Waited like 3 weeks too long.
Yep, they can move fast, and it's you choose what hunt you want to get thrilled by. If you're really, which is one of the reasons why I'm so busy doing other stuff that I have not tried to keep up with all the paperback issues in the US and the UK. I've been there's still some trick. I'm going to show real quick 2 little things that came in recently for my collection because they're fun, but I've got a different focus. I'm not trying to fill out the paperbacks myself like some other people are, and that's fine. I have reading copies of absolutely everything that that's coming out in this paperback volume.
It does seem a lot easier to collect hardbacks than paperbacks because you don't tend to have the ISBN issue so much with hardbacks. They don't tend to change the cover on the hardback and keep the same ISBN. They do sometimes, But it's
They do
not. It's not
sometimes.
as common. But it's not as
It's-
common.
Yeah.
It's not as
nowhere near
common, and the impressions don't sell out so quickly. Like paperbacks can churn through impressions in weeks, right? They can print up 5,000 paperbacks, and then 6 weeks later they've got another shipment, and your impression numbers change. Whereas hardcovers, when something comes out, if you're looking for a particular impression, it seems most of the time that you can get, the first impression of a new release for a lot longer in general.
Yeah, because they're a higher price point, obviously, and they don't sell quite as quickly as there is a couple of I would say maybe like for the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit, those probably those sell a little bit quicker than if you're waiting around for, like, for example, this History of Middle Earth, the box set #1. I think you're probably pretty safe for the next few months if you want first printings of this particular box set. I think you're safe for the time being. I wouldn't wait too long if you want a first printing, but I think you're safe for now.
Yep. So yeah, just close out the topic. Bill had one last comment, which is he just wants reading copies that match. You're going to do fine just buying them as they come out. Certainly, if you want the new releases, they're not all out yet. So just kind of watch TolkienGuide forums, and we mention every time the next set have come out. I think there's 5 to 7 of them that are out. If you want the older ones, your best bet at this point is you're going to have to go to eBay and look for pictures. And once you've got one and you want to match it, just follow the markets and look at pictures.
Just if you're patient, you can pretty much get anything if you're patient.
Patience is key. And for reading copies, just, you're going to have a hard time going wrong just looking at listings. And if you're buying from a new bookseller, you're going to get awesome reading copies. They're going to be fine. So I think we got just time for one more topic. Actually, I was going to show off 2 small things I wanted to mention just because they're fun, but we're pushing longer than we wanted to go, but that's always fun. These are one's very old. I'm going to take a peek and see if it has a date on it. This one was 2004 original issue. So this is a DVD of an animated version of Mr. Bliss. It's based almost entirely on Tolkien's own illustrations, completely unauthorized. It was made in Russia. The audio is in Russian of the books, although it does have English subtitles to follow along. I love the artwork that they did. They did a great job of mimicking Tolkien's illustrations for the book. It's not long as far as an animated video. I think it's like 15, 20 minutes long.
That's not really a very long book, is it?
No, exactly. It says 36 minutes on the back of the box.
Yeah.
And then it's got a couple, like they did Oliphant and a couple of other Tolkien poems illustrated as well. So I love fan-made productions like this. Again, it's not authorized. It was only available in Russia, so very few copies trickled out, and it's 20 years old at this point. So I was just lucky with a friend who had collected it back decades ago, who was downsizing and was able to sell that one to me. So that's just a fun little find. I always like to show off things that are not usually seen like that. He's been downsizing
a lot lately. He's put out a lot of cool items that I didn't know existed. That friend you mentioned is downsizing.
Yep. Last one, I'll spend just a moment on. This is a new release from just a few months ago. It is a translation of The Hobbit into, and I'm going to apologize for butchering the pronunciation of this, but it's Lul Sami, which is a language spoken in a small region of Norway and Sweden in the Lul River Valley. From what I am told, there's only around 600 or 700 people who still speak that language as their primary, and there's maybe 1,000 to 1,500 who have learned it as a second language. And so they're
going to sell at least 1,000 copies of those, Jim, or something like that.
I think
they've got a built-in audience of like 600 to 1,000.
So this was published intending to go to libraries in that region, and the publisher was very kind to make some copies available to collectors. So I know of a handful. Hank, the Hobbit Hunter, has shown one off in his collection because he got one, and there's a few others that I know of that made me aware of its existence. And so that was a fun addition. I'd love being able to support publishers who are translating The Hobbit and other Tolkien books into lesser known languages, because that's it's great for those languages to have books it translated into them that are interesting enough to keep those people reading the language and to kind of keep it alive and to expose it to more people. So I'm quite happy to add little things like that. The maps and illustrations in that are Tolkien's. They didn't translate the maps or the titles or the illustrations. Those are reproduced in their
So
original form in this book.
The maps are in English. They didn't translate the maps.
Yeah, correct. No, maps in this one are. I have other translations like the Evertype Hobbits. All the maps and the runes even are translated into the.
Yeah, I was going to say the
language.
maps and those are translated. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, that was those are the two little things I wanted to show off. So anything else you guys want to mention? We're low on time, so I was just going to close this out unless.
I think this is about the right time to finish.
Yep.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming to watch us
Absolutely.
talk about Tolkien for an hour.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with us.
Yep.
Yeah.
So upcoming calendar, we have our member meetup. The sort of our Smile Moot is on March 24th. So I think Andrew, you're hosting this one.
Yeah, Trotter's hosting that one.
Trotter is going to be hosting that one March 24th. That's members only, so we don't stream it. It's not recorded, so we're able to delve into a little more detail and some interesting things behind the scenes in those. And then we'll be doing another live stream like this for the public sometime in April. We'll get that scheduled and announced in the coming weeks. So yeah, thank you again for coming. Please check us out. We have social media presence on Twitter. Reddit is hosted by On the Trail. Blue Sky, I am there. You can find us on Facebook, obviously YouTube as well. We really appreciate Instagram. We appreciate your follows and sharing and reaching out to us with questions either on the site or through any of these social media accounts. And we look forward to seeing you all again. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.